This is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because we do not get taught the fundamentals of what it is to be a human being interacting in this world. We do not get taught how to process our emotions. Hi everyone, welcome to the Lead from Love podcast. My name is Yalini. I am your host and love coach. Now, I created this platform because I want you to know that there is another way for you to live that doesn't have to be full of pain and suffering. Because over the years of being a therapist and a coach, I have worked with so many clients that have spent so much of their lives with anxiety, depression, with fear and panic and turmoil inside of them, that wasn't a life for them. And they just didn't know another way out. And they thought they had 1,000,001 different problems. But what I found over the years is that most of their problems only comes down to a belief that they're not good enough, a belief that they're not worthy, a belief that they're not lovable. And so when we can start to do the work to release you from those beliefs, then the depression starts to disappear. The anxiety starts to drop away because you start to believe that you are good enough and what you're doing is good enough. So this podcast is about showing you that way, showing you a way out of your fear and your pain and back into your heart and peace. And so the reason I call this podcast Lead from Love, not with, because it's not just about having love in your life. It's about using your heart as the starting point. Because when we find the courage to return to our heart, that is where true healing starts. That is where you start creating changes for yourself. So to help show you the way in this podcast, I'm going to share parts of my life and my story and who I am, so that you know that if I can go through tough things and get to the other side, then you can too. Now, I'm not going to be sitting here rattling off all of my qualifications in psychology and hypnotherapy and NLP and criminology and health and wellness and all of those things, because sure, they give me the tools to support clients the way that I do. But the most powerful learnings that I have gained came through my own personal experience, came through all the things that I had to get through and learn for myself. And that's why I'm in a place where I can support people, because I've done the work. I've been through those trenches. And there are people out there who don't have to go through all of these things, that can learn and can apply it and are great at helping their clients. But for me, the people I resonate with are the ones who walk their talk. And so that's what I'm going to share with you. So in today's episode, I'm going to be really raw and real and vulnerable with you. And I'm going to share parts of my life that I don't normally talk about, let alone publicly. So that feels a little bit scary inside of me. But I'm going to do it anyway, because one of the things that I teach my clients is how to love and embrace the fullness of who they are and be unapologetically them. And I can't teach that if I'm not willing to do it myself. Trigger warning, some of the things that I'll be covering today does include things like violence and sexual assault and abuse. And it's not about being heavy or dark. So I don't want this to be a story where it feels really low or hard. I'm sharing it because some of these elements may resonate with you. So I want you to know that you're not alone. And if you can see yourself in parts of this story, I want you to have hope that you can get to another side, because it ends well. Okay, I made it through. I am here and I'm in a place where I feel safe enough within myself to be able to share it. So yes, it feels scary inside of me to talk about it, but it's not because I'm re-traumatizing myself. It's because I'm just sharing it so publicly. So this is me. This is who I am. And I know that some elements of this may surprise people that may know me, because, you know, some people think of me as being really happy and optimistic and fun. And I am some of those things. But sometimes you might see me as being so happy because I learnt from a very young age how to put up a front, how to wear my mask. Because if I appeared happy, then you wouldn't ask me questions. You wouldn't push to see what was going on beneath the surface. And with a lot of what happened, I ended up being really, really depressed. And I remember once someone was calling, and I had just been crying and I had tears rolling down my face. And I went to pick up the phone. You know, when you're having a phone conversation, they can't see what you look like. They can't see what's going on for you. And so I could cover it with my voice. I could sound really happy and I could put up that front. And what was interesting is I still had tears pouring down my face whilst I was talking. And the person on the other end of the phone had no idea, to the point that they actually went, "Wow, you're so happy. You know, I don't think you've ever had a sad day in your life. You're always so bubbly." And that story stuck with me because it really highlighted how good I was at covering up what was going on for me. Because growing up, we did it tough. We didn't have much. We were poor. And even though I was born in Paris, which I know can sound amazing, we were a family of 5 living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And if you've ever been to Paris, you know that those spaces are small. So you're essentially just living on top of one another. And then when we moved to Australia, my dad had passed. So my mum was now left widowed at 33 with 3 kids under the age of 10. So bless her, she did what she could to make ends meet, but we struggled. I remember doing a grocery shop for the week for the family, and we were, you know, at this point a family of 4, doing a shop for $50. So you become really good at budgeting and figuring out just what's going to end up in your basket. There was a point where we were living with food stamps and housing commission and going without. And, you know, my school, you know, they were amazing. They understood what was happening and they wanted to support me. But at the same time, it doesn't feel good inside of you when everyone pities you as you grow up. When you grow up as the charity case, that's not a nice feeling inside. And that's not who I wanted to be. So yeah, I get I get what it is to do it tough financially, to know where your next meal is coming from. But I also know what it is to grow up with violence and with abuse. Because my dad, he didn't know how to look at his 3 kids and see them as something to be proud of. He saw his life as something he wanted to escape from. And so he found his refuge at the bottom of a wine bottle every night. So his soldiers checked the building. So you're just left with an empty shell of a man that uses his family as an outlet. So he didn't know how to control his rage and his temper. And, you know, when you've been drinking, you lose your inhibitions, you lose your self-control. He was a scary man. And I always knew that there were things going on in my childhood because I didn't have any conscious memories. I didn't know or remember anything from growing up as a kid. That was always something in the back of my mind that I discovered pretty early on, that I became really good at repressing bad memories. So whenever something bad happened, I'd forget it. Over the years, as I went through my own healing journey, memories started popping back up because I was finally in a place where I was ready to face some of the things that had happened. One of the memories that came up was when I was about 3 and no one else was home but my dad. And living in such a small apartment, there's not many places to hide. So I ended up burying myself in the back of the wardrobe. And it was dark. And I made sure it was really quiet. But then I heard his footsteps coming closer. And then the door creaked open until he was standing in front of me. And his eyes were glazed over. And that's not my father that's standing there anymore at that point. It's just a lost soul of a man. And as he came closer and pulled me into him, he put something in my mouth that he shouldn't have until I started choking. And what's sad is, for a little girl, the first relationship she has with a man is her father. And what she needs from a father is to feel safe, to feel protected, to feel loved, to feel seen, to feel heard. And my dad couldn't be that for me. And so then, as fate had it, he ended up getting cancer and dying when I was 5. And I used to joke that, it was a good thing because life was better without him. But that little girl still wanted a father. She wanted a man to love and protect her. So him passing left a void inside of me. So then when we moved to Australia to have a better quality of life, or the hope of a better quality of life, then my uncles were here. So great, new role models, new male figures to take up that space or fill that void. But those uncles had their own stories. And so their love came out sideways too. Because, being 5 or 6, having grown men towering over you that are broad, where you can hear the rage in their voices, where their eyes are bloodshot with anger, where you can smell the whiskey on their breath and they don't have any control over themselves at this point. That was scary. I grew up watching them come over to the house, and for whatever reason that they had on their mind, watching them drag my mum into the next room where you would just hear screaming and things breaking. And, they would one of them would just stand over you and tell you to be quiet and not to say anything, because otherwise he would kill you. And when you feel the rage of that person towering over you, that doesn't feel like a joke. That feels really scary. And there was a point where it caused so many issues that my mum developed really severe anorexia and needed to be hospitalized because they gave her, a number of months to live if she didn't change. And so these men, or this one particular uncle that used to come round to beat her up every day, to force feed her, out of love, of course, no one believed us when we said that he would threaten to kill us. In fact, the whole family turned against us and said, "Why are you so ungrateful? Why would you make up all of these awful lies? Can't you tell that he loves you?" So the solution to create harmony in the family was, whilst my mum was in hospital, to pack us up and make us live with him. And that's really something, to now have to live under the roof of a man that you have witnessed be violent and threaten you when you're just a kid, and have to be okay with that and live with that fear. And that wasn't the life that I wanted. So that wasn't the love that I wanted, because all I knew is that love is violence. And when you are mad, when you can feel that rage surging through your body, there is only one way out. And, bless my uncles, they were creative and they taught my mum, you don't just have to use your hands and you don't just have to use a wooden spoon because that thing breaks. So you're just better off going outside and breaking branches off a tree and stacking them all around the house, because when you hit your kids and those branches break, then you've got another supply ready to go. And so that was the norm. It was, you lash out and you do it properly. That form of lashing out was, I didn't know any better. And so it didn't matter who it was. It would be you lash out. If it's your mum, if it's your siblings, everyone copped it. For the longest time, I felt a lot of shame and a lot of guilt with how I even showed up in that scenario, because that's not who I wanted to be. But I didn't know any different. And so all of that rage, all of that hurt, all of the pain from not having someone to love and protect me and keep me safe, it just felt too big inside of me. I thought it would end up killing me. So I did the only thing that I could to survive, and I just shut my heart down. I shut it down and I pushed everyone away, and I built my walls up so well, which is why people couldn't tell how depressed I was. What's sad is when you build up those walls, sure, you can't feel the pain because you've just gone numb. But you also don't let any of the good in either. Because to let someone in is scary, because if they come in and they see you, then they might see all of the ugly stuff too. And so I wanted to avoid that for as long as possible. I got so good at putting up a facade. I actually thought I was fine. I fooled myself. I'm like, I am good. I have dealt with my stuff. That's not an issue anymore. And one thing I've learned from my personal experience and with my clients is you can run, but you cannot hide, because sooner or later, everything that you have repressed, everything that you have pushed down will end up coming up to the surface, because there's only so much your body can hold on to, and it takes a toll. And sometimes with my clients, the way that I see it is it gets to a point where they start physically malfunctioning, where they have panic attacks, they can't breathe, they can't leave the house or go to work, and they lock themselves in the shower. And sometimes it gets to a stage of disease where they get really sick before they're willing to have a look and see what's going on inside of them. And for me, what it took, because I really didn't want to look what was going on under that surface, it took for me to get sick. So I ended up getting glandular fever, then chronic fatigue, and then I got sick over and over again for about 1 to 2 years. Everything, like every month, every other week, I was sick, always in bed. And people used to comment on how abnormal that was, that it wasn't, something was wrong for me to be getting this sick all of the time. And it's because my body couldn't take everything that it was holding on to. It was wearing me down. It was scary. I'm not going to lie. I didn't want to have a look at what was happening. If I could have gotten away with pretending I was fine for the rest of my life, I absolutely would have done that. But continuing the way I was, and I was just in my early 20s, that wasn't a life for me. I wasn't living. I could hardly work. I was exhausted and depleted and sick all of the time. So I had to do the work to start feeling safe within myself, to be vulnerable, to start looking at the layers that I had stuffed down, to start feeling comfortable in my anger, to feel safe in all of my pain, to let that come up, all the good and the bad and the ugly, so I could set myself free. That anger and that rage that I thought would kill me actually wasn't as bad as I thought. the crazy part was that it wasn't my pain that caused me the most suffering. The really hard pill to swallow was that by pushing everything down and pushing everyone away, I had made myself alone. And I had chosen that. I did that to myself. Because the only thing I ever really wanted was to be loved and held and seen. And I was so scared with all of the things that I had going on inside of me that I didn't let anyone in, which meant I couldn't be loved in the way that I wanted and desired and needed. And so that's where I really had to make some changes. It was hard confronting those parts of me and the stories that I had to live through in my own traumas. But I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to say that my dad is a bad person or my uncles were bad people. I'm not saying that what they did was okay, that was wrong. But what I know is that everyone has a story. I'm not interested in judging anyone, because when you judge someone, you have to hold a level of anger or pain. And it's not them that's carrying the pain, it's you. And I suffered enough. I have no need or desire to hold on to any more of that anger or any more of that pain. I'd rather come back into my heart and have compassion for myself and for other people. And one thing I learned when I studied criminology is that everybody has a story. And often the people that inflict pain have had much worse happen to them. I remember when I did my master's, people used to come to me and go, oh my gosh, so what have you learned about these criminals? What makes them so deviant and what's wrong with them? And, you know, what's going inside of their brains and their minds that they're so terrible? And you know what I learned? That for the most part, they're not any different to you or me. The difference is just the level of pain and suffering they've endured. Because when I used to look at these case studies, what was scary was realizing how similar my story was to them and how lucky I was that I didn't become another statistic. Because for the most part, these are people that have lived through poverty, that have lived through violence, that have lived through all sorts of abuse. And so that's why I'm not here to judge. Because I help people on both sides of the story, whether you've been abused or the abuser. And one thing I believe is that it's not your fault that you didn't know any better. Because if you are not taught how to have love and compassion, how to be in your emotions, how to communicate by your family, then how could you know any better? Because we don't get taught this at school. This is why I'm so passionate about what I do, because even though we learn things like maths and English and science and, you know, the planets and history at school, we do not get taught the fundamentals of what it is to be a human being interacting in this world. We do not get taught how to process our emotions, how to feel safe in our anger, how to sit in it, how to communicate, how to connect with one another, what it is to be in your masculine or feminine energy and how that changes over time. How to just be a human. So how could you know any different if no one else teaches it to you? And I have this conversation with my clients all of the time, because when we go through this, when I teach them this, when I support them with these things, they just go, how could we not know this before? Because it just seems and feels like such a basic life skill that everybody needs. But it's never too late to learn. And if I got through it and go through what I went through with, to now have my heart open and feel safe to be vulnerable, safe to share this story, because I'm in a place in my life now where I can let people in and I do feel loved and I'm happy in my own skin, and I absolutely found my voice because I'm not that little girl anymore that was told to be quiet. And I feel safe to share my truth, no matter what people think. I'm not here to win a popularity contest. I'm just here to be who I am. And I love myself enough to show up fully as me, because I want you to know that it's safe for you to do that too. And for me, it's all about compassion. And there's a great quote that I love from Warren Worship, and it's, truth without love is brutality. And love without truth is hypocrisy. And that really resonates deeply with me, because during COVID, the thing that was really tough for me to witness was how we all lost our way in our heart, because it was an unprecedented time. And there was a lot of fear, and rightly so. I get it. I spent most of my life living in fear. So I know what that does to a person. And when we're living in fear, we are absolutely disconnected from our hearts, and we lose the ability to hear one another and accept one another. And we try to control the narrative so that we can keep ourselves safe. With all of the work that I had done with myself and with my clients to teach love, to teach compassion, to support healing, it was scary to live in a world where we were all turning on one another, losing disconnect from one another, because we were all just looking to survive. For a lot of people, that survival was to look to a solution that was being rolled out. And that had to be it. That had to be the only way. We all had to do it, because otherwise it was scary. For me, it took me such a journey to feel safe in my body and become connected, where I could listen to what was right and true for me and own it fully. But I wasn't going to give that up for anyone. I didn't do all of this work to just throw it all away. And so having people around me that believed that was only one solution, that couldn't understand whether I didn't feel good or true for me, it was another form of disconnect. One thing that I know is that there was no way that I would ever allow another person to force something into my body without my consent. Because for me, that is just rape in another form. And so I practice what I preach. And where something felt wrong within me, there was no way I was going to do that. And so I made those hard decisions, even if that meant losing people in my life, even if that meant being shunned, even if that meant that I couldn't go out, and even if that meant losing a paycheck. And even though this story is contentious, the reason I'm sharing it is because true love has no judgment. True love is about having compassion to understand each other and our different beliefs and perspectives, because we're supposed to be different. We're supposed to be unique individuals. We're not supposed to be cookie-cutter versions of one another. How boring would that world be? It's only when we can come back to our hearts that we can hear one another and that we can hear ourselves and really start the healing process. So that is my story and a little bit about me. And I hope that you can use it as a springboard for your healing journey too. Because my deepest desire is for you to know that you are lovable just as you are, that it is safe for you to embrace the fullness of who you are, that you get to live this life as your authentic self. You don't have to hide any longer, because whatever happened in your past, it's gotten you to this point. But it doesn't have to determine your future, because if I can move from pain to love, then anyone can, because I'm not any different to you. I don't have special powers. I'm just trying to do the best I can. And even though I know, I get it, it might feel scary to pull back the covers and see what's going on for you. Trust me, whatever you're scared to face, it won't be as bad as you think. And you don't have to do anything radical either. It just takes one small step for you to start healing. So as you flow through your day, I hope that what I've shared can help inspire you to come back to your heart and to know that it's safe, so you can also lead from love.